There's nothing better than accepting failure in the arts, because it is what makes it art. You have to fail before greatness, and greatness is measured, failure isn't. So you might as well fail and get there the right way, so that when it is measured, it is great.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Vincent D'Onofrio is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new role? Is there a typical first step that you take?
Well, there's several first steps, I guess, because somebody says, hey, there's this script, and that could come from an agent, it could come from a friend, it could come from somebody that you appreciate already but you've never met, another filmmaker, it could come from a writer or producer, and sometimes, comes from your agent or manager. And you want to know who's involved in it. You want to know who's producing it. Do you know these people that are producing it? Have you worked with them before? What have they done? Do you like anything they've done? Do you get what they're doing? And then it comes down to is there a director attached? If there is, who is it? What has that person done? Who is that person? Not who are they as what's their success, but who are they as a person? What are they going to be like to work with? That's always looming, because that's really important to some actors, not important to others, but it's important to me who I'm working with. I learned that the hard way over the years. More times than not, you find that somebody that's going to approach you to do something that's a huge endeavor for them, most of the time they're pretty intelligent, pretty sane people, and very committed to their material. Otherwise, they wouldn't be taking such a chance to make it. Which is, people. I don't know if people think that a movie is easy to make, but it's not. It's hard to make. Any kind of movie is hard to make. A comedy, anything. But the first actual work as an actor by myself is I'll sit in my office and I'll read it. This is when I've committed to it already, right?
Yeah.
So I'll read it and I'll always read it first without my character in mind, because I don't want to miss anything. So I don't read it from my character's point of view. Mm-hmm. Right? So I read the whole script, and I'll, for me, I'm dyslexic, so I have to read it twice. Mm. My first reads are twice in a row, most of the time. And then I'll read it, I'll put it down, and I'll read it the next day again from my character's point of view, and I'll see everything that way. I think it's important to do that. Other actors have different ways of doing things, obviously, and it's in this business as a performer, it's whatever really you feel comfortable with, as an individual. So, I feel comfortable with then, at that point, reading it on my own, twice without my character in mind, and then reading it again with my character in mind, and then I feel like that opens up the whole story for me, and I don't miss anything if I do that, if I read it without my character in mind first. Mm-hmm. That's the beginning of analysis, script analysis, and then you really just basically, we can get more specific if you want me to, yes. but you take it apart. You always need to know where your characters coming from, where they are and where they're going throughout the whole story. And once you kind of figure that out, you start once you put that in your mind and you're reading it with that and taking notes with a pencil, the way that I do it, and you realize that there's questions that need to be answered. And so you do a lot of turning back to pages that you've already read. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is because of this. And so it's usually what or why. Like why? And every time you feel like a what question or a why question, then you know you need to go back and answer it. And if it's not answered, you write it down because maybe you've missed something, or maybe the writer or maybe the director knows, sees it in a completely different way and has something in mind that's not on the page, you know? So you do the whole script like that. That's the beginning steps of analysis. And then answering all those questions. Why this, why that? Where are you coming from? Where are you, and where are you going? The reason why I start with that is because over the years, it's embedded in me to do that so that it's my freshest look at my journey is where was I, where am I coming from, where am I, and where am I going? That's the freshest look I'm ever going to have. And that stays with me forever if I do it that way. Like I'll be on the set one day and we'll be doing a scene and I'm entering a building. I know where I'm coming from. I know where I'm going, right? Yes. And it's on my mind. Literally what I'm saying to you now is on my mind. Where am I coming from? Where am I now? Where am I going? And that helps a lot. It helps a lot more than you would think. The other thing is what I do. The other thing is if you're not playing a lead in the movie, I play a lot of supporting roles. And that's what I believe that I was meant to do, to be a character actor. I had in my younger years, I kind of went the route of leading man for a little while, but I just became disinterested. And I felt like there was more to dive into. And if a good story came up where it happened to be the lead to do and somebody wanted me to do it, I would do it if I liked it. But my journey has been one that I find it more interesting to do supporting roles or the second lead or something like that. So if you're doing a supporting role in a story, you need to do script analysis even more in depth, really, because it's sort of like if you were to picture a large painting on a wall. Let's say the painting is like 10 by 7 feet or something. It's a river. A river runs through the painting from the upper right of the frame down to the lower left of the frame. And then on the upper left of the frame is a forest or mountains. Let's say a mountain and forest. And then in the lower right, on the other side of the river, is a patch of flowers, let's say. They're in the forefront. But it's just a patch. So if you have to find the structure of the story, the composition, where your character fits within the composition of the story. Because if you're the daisies, you don't want to shine too bright and you don't want to shine too little because you'll ruin the composition. So you have to figure out how bright or how bright you don't shine. This stuff is very basic, what I'm explaining, but it's very important to know because you want to be helping service the story. That's our job in the end, is to service the story. Yes. And so you have to figure out as an actor, the best way you can do that. And I think the best way you can do that is through script analysis. It oftentimes makes you one of the people that know most about the script when you're on the set. Just because other people have a lot other things to do. Super important, no matter if you're the lead or the supporting actor. I mean, in a nutshell, basically, that's my first step.
Do you think that you take that on in terms of seeing if you're the daisy and how bright you have to shine, because you can't rely on the director to help you with that, but you really shouldn't you? I mean, shouldn't that be something that somebody should be
for sure
telling you?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you take it on because they don't do that, right?
Well, no, you take it on because I believe it's your job to service the story, and anybody that's there to help service the story too is going to join you in that way. And it's okay to know the same things, or it's okay to discover the same things, or it's okay to discover different things, or it's okay to disagree with discoveries. And that's what the director is for. The director is going to make his or her movie, and you need to do that. They're the boss. You have to service that. There's been a few times in my career, like my career is like almost 40 years now or more, and I think, and I still, on one hand, I can still count the times, only a few times, that a director was so off that I had to disagree and stand my ground. Like, that's a very rare thing, and it doesn't happen often enough to worry about. So I just concern myself what I think is my job, and that going in, anything that the director has to say will be either ring true or not to me. And if the director has done his or her homework and is passionate about the project as they say they are, they know just as much or more than you about the story. And you should be able to rely on a director for help when it comes to that. There's often times when I'll be in the middle of like let's say we've done a couple of scenes that day, and they were intense scenes, and we have a third one to do, and it's also intense. Like, there will be times when I'll be on a set and I'll just like, I'm getting a little fried. We're on our 11th hour or something, and I'm getting a little fried, and I'll say to the director, so where am I coming from? Where am I going? Like, real quick, just a reminder, just before we roll. Stuff like that is very helpful. Or the director, which has happened many, 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 many times, will come up to you and say, hey, don't forget, you're coming from this happened, and then this is going to happen later on. So this is what this scene is about because of what happened before and what's going to happen later on. So I do think it's okay to do that kind of homework, because hopefully the director has done the same. And in most cases, in my experience, they mostly know what the hell's going on most of the time.
The other thing you said that I want to talk about is, I feel like it's so important what you said. It feels like a foundational thing of the whys and the whats, and having that importantly first, and then it feels foundational, literally, like that's the foundation of the house. You build things on top of it, and if it's solid, then your work is going to be solid, right? I mean, that feels like that. But do you ever work with people that don't have that foundation, and they're kind of grabbing and then even if they find it out, then it's like it doesn't stick then, does it?
I think when the chips are down, the most talented people come up with the stuff they need to. And this is my experience. I think that you're always going to run into actors on every show, literally every show that you do, movie or show, whatever you're doing. And that you're going to run into actors that are not as either experienced as some of the other actors, or they're not studied enough. Nobody has pounded into them like it was when I was young, pounded into me that the work you have to do before you show up on a set. Look, this business that we're in here it's a tough thing to describe, because it's acting has a lot to do with who that person is, like who the actor is, and even why they're hired has a lot to do with who they are, male or female. But there's something about them that you see in them and the director has seen in them, obviously, and that they're gonna get away with the scene. You can see that they're going to. They might need a little nudge, but they're open enough as a human being to sell the whole thing, and in a very unique way, because they're not trying to be another actor, or they're not trying to be this or that all wrapped into one. They're not trying to be their favorite actors wrapped into one. They're just going off their own person, and as long as it's stays personal like that, and they're at least the kind of person that has that's able to, on a set with a lot of people, that's able to know how to stay open and receive. That can be everything sometimes. Strasberg, he always said, if you don't need it, don't use it. You can go out on the stage every night, but this is for if you need it.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that. If I can approach a set and do a few scenes in a day without ever using any kind of technique, I'm very happy doing that. Like there's no problem.
Yeah.
I'm happy. And that does happen a lot. But then there's times when you need to make transitions that are impossible. It would take if you weren't using technique, it would take like a couple of days to get through.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to go through a whole kind of, you'd have to go through it for real, so to speak,
Speaking of this, when I wanted to go to college, I just went to the bookstore in near Scranton, Pennsylvania, right? And they don't have like one big book of colleges. Like, people don't realize this about the Dark Ages, right? You just pick up a book and I look at film, and there was like 3 entries for for the East Coast, right? It was like NYU, Columbia, School of Visual Arts. I just picked that one, School of Visual Arts, went there, changed my life, entirely because of this book. The way you tell it is a similar story about coming to the Stanislavski method, right? Just seeing it written down somewhere and thinking that's the method.
Well, the way I started acting, I just I didn't think about it previous to like a few months before I started. Like, I didn't act in high school. I had no urge to be an actor and anything. I didn't find any of that in me at all until later. There was nothing inside me. I should have known, because I watched movies constantly and would sit in triple features by myself when I was young, and went and saw everything that came out in my neighborhood when I was young, and watched all the old movies that used to be on television late at night, and I would just watch everything that I could watch. And whenever we had enough money to go see a play or something like that, I would be taken to a play, mostly musicals and stuff like that. I just loved the mechanics of the whole thing, and the entertainment value, and how much I was entertained by it, like most people, right? So I think that once I came back to New York, I was born in Brooklyn but raised in Florida. Once I decided I was going to go to New York, my sister had decided that she was interested in studying acting. And so we found this place with the help of my father, who was also into acting a little bit. He was an interior designer by trade, but wherever he lived, he opened he'd started community theater, which was kind of nice because I used to run lights and build sets with him and stuff like that. And we found the American Stanislavski Theater Company that Sonia Moore used to have when she was alive. And, I did my research and, figured out that she was actually one of his proteges and stuff. And that she was the only one really teaching the Stanislavski system, which is the system of acting that he formed after the first 10 years of his studies. The first 10 years of Stanislavski is method acting, basically. It's what Klerman and Strasberg and all those people turned into the method, which that's another story. So I just went in to her, and I started to listen, and I started to, learn how to do the Stanislavski system of acting by Sonia Moore, and stuck to those rules only. And in her, she was very particular, whereas she had a touring company that you could get into, but you'd have to be good, and you can only get into like after a couple of years of studying with her. And just so happened that I met like one of my best friends in that class, and my sister. It just so happened the 3 of us excelled into that company within a year, less than a year, and we were doing plays with her, and traveling with her, and doing plays. And it was the first time I had been introduced to anything like that, any kind of acting and stuff. And I just stuck to the book. And anyway, you were very scared. She was very scary, Sonia Moore. So you didn't want to get yelled at or screamed at. And she was, by the end of the classes, she had drank her bottle of orange juice, which was half vodka, you know. And so you didn't want to get yelled at her by the end of the, yelled at by her by the end of the day, because she was very sharp with her tongue. And so I would do it. I would do the work, and I would do all this acting that was very, very, very Stanislavski, and I would, which is all kind of about working from the outside in instead of the inside out. Is the easiest way to explain it. Like different postures, and she used to do this exercise called the Statue of Torment, where you go and find an image, a painting, a sculpture, whatever, of somebody in pain or somebody in some kind of emotional state. And then in class, recreate that structure and add an inner monologue to it. So if there was a script, if there was a play, right, you would, between the words of the play that the author wrote, you would write your inner monologue of what you were thinking. And you would have to memorize the inner monologue and the dialogue from the, and you would have to teach yourself to simultaneously repeat those lines while the other person is talking, and you're listening and reacting to anything they might do, and saying your lines. And if you're in that posture, the exercise was to do a couple of lines from a script, create an inner monologue that had something to do with you personally, and that helped service the story. In the end. So she was teaching us to use our own interiors, but not in a method way. In this new system. The reason why he stopped teaching that kind of method acting is because he lost control of his actors. Because they became too self-indulgent, which explains a lot when it comes to method acting. Anyway, I was thrust into this, on my own accord, and so it was all kind of new to me. It was, I didn't know I didn't feel like back then, I do now, but back then I didn't feel like I was an actor. I felt like I was somebody that wanted to be an actor, and if I wanted to be something, I should learn it, from the best, or whatever I could afford at the time, or however, whatever situation I could put myself in. And I used to, once I got my discipline sorted and started to pay the attention that I was supposed to pay to this kind of stuff, I was in full-heartedly, and I had a chance to meet a woman named Sharon Chatton, who was a member of Actors Studio, and she became my mentor. And I moved away from the Stanislavski system and went into method acting. But I've never forgotten it, and I use it all the time. I use posture stuff all the time. You can see it in my work. I use it all the time, and it's really important to me. I wouldn't have known how to do all that stuff so seamlessly if it wasn't for Sonia Moore. So I was picking up things left and right, and I think that there were people that were super committed to acting, but not super committed to studying, and not super committed to getting work. They like to call themselves actors, and they like to behave like actors, and they actually did some decent work, but they lacked some kind of motivation to be able to actually get out there and get work. So,
do you think that this was about you being a sponge and just soaking up whatever was given to you, and then you use it now, or do you think that this actual system you were lucky enough to fall into actually does work best for you? Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was the Meisner method or something else, would you have sponged it up the same way and used it?
Probably.
Yeah.
I know people, really great actors that have studied like Meisner and other techniques, and just classical actors too, or actors that studied at RADA and at the National in England, and they're all so fucking good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're amazing. And,
Yeah.
these ones that I've worked with, and, you know, it only told me early on that we're all doing sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, because it is really, whether people like to admit it or not, it's still really mostly rooted in Stanislavski.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of what anybody says they're doing, or even if they say they don't have a technique,
Yeah.
most of what they're doing is Stanislavski.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but you don't have to call it that if you don't want
Right.
to, whatever. And I also think that, which I said at the beginning of this part of the conversation, is that, you know, it takes all types. You know, you don't want to, you can easily ruin somebody's talent by forcing.
Yes.
Because there's some people that, and they're around us all the time, that are very successful and really fucking good actors, like really good actors, like not like, you know, just okay, but like top notch, that, you know, mostly never studied.
Yeah.
And that's great, you know, like it's like that's the way it is. I think that's the way it is with all artists.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I think that's okay.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm saying that, but I think it's important to say.
Yeah, I think it is important.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard for actors to commit to an audition. An actor just has to be thinking, do I want to spend 2 days filming this? Like, what is this? And you hear nothing. I mean, it's so tiring. But I'm thinking back to the story you told about having to rent equipment to film this audition for Kubrick.
Yeah.
It's because somebody told, I think it was Modine that told you,
Yeah.
that they're looking for other people. I mean, I can't imagine this. You had to rent equipment to put yourself on tape for this insanely low chance.
Do you remember that big place on Broadway downtown that had all that camera equipment?
Yeah, that's where I got my first camera.
Well, that's where I rented the camera from.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Do you remember the name of
school?
It was a big kind of place.
It's not
I
there
forget the
anymore,
name.
no. Yeah.
No, it's not there anymore.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
a giant place.
Yeah, I
with
know
like
what you're talking
heaven.
about.
Yeah. But anyway, we rented this kind of camera that was like this big and a deck that, you know, giant deck.
Yeah. But
And
I want to know, though,
very
in your
expensive.
mind, though, it just seems cosmic that you would go through this effort to do that. To pay money to rent it. I remember when I rented a VHS camera, it was $50.
Yeah.
It was like $50.
No, it's a lot.
Which is a lot
It's
of money back then.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, spending money. Like, in the mentality of today, they juggle the idea of, is this worth it? Like, to spend my time? It doesn't cost anything. It's actually easy to do because we carry around the camera with us everywhere.
Yeah.
But then you have to rent it, you have to get somebody to film it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And edit it.
Make sure. And edit it.
Because we did like 8 takes, so I didn't send them 8 takes.
Then you have to go to like a deck.
No, so you know
a
what I
double
did?
deck thing.
Well, yeah. So I went to NYU, and I hung out in the lobby at NYU, and I waited until I saw some kind of scruffy guy that I could talk, looked like he would talk to me. And I went up to this big fucking guy, this big dude. It was like my size, but really scruffy and looked like, you know, he lived partially on the street, but he was there at NYU. And I said, hey, do you know how to edit stuff? And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm learning how to edit stuff. I go, do you have access to edit? And I go, how much would you charge me to edit? I have 8 takes of something and I only want to send 2 to him. You know, how much would you charge me? He goes, you know, I'll do it for a few bucks. How much you got? And I gave him like $20. We went into this room. I had the tape with me. And he did it in like 5 minutes. He said, which ones do you like? This one? And then he handed me, he said, this is like $2. This is like $3, this thing. So you're going to have to give me an extra $3. So I gave him an extra $3, the tape for the tape.
And did you go back to him
cassette.
again when Kubrick wanted another tape?
Yes, I did.
Same guy.
Same guy, yeah.
Why do I find this fascinating?
But you do it because you want it.
Yeah.
You want it bad. I mean, can you imagine? Matthew and I knew each other from auditions and from a class that we were in together for a while. The same teacher, Sharon, I think. And a lot of people were in that class, by the way, a lot of very talented people that are very successful today. But anyway, it's crazy to think about it, the classes that the actors that she was teaching at the time. Anyway, so, you know, he said, you know, it's like, I don't know what what's available, but there is a part that we don't know what it is because we haven't read that part of the script yet. But you should send it. You should send a thing because you never know.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a film agent. I had a theater agent. I had done Broadway already, but I hadn't done. I'd never had a film agent, and so I got a film agent when I got the part. Though.
Yeah.
I went to William Morris and went into the lobby of William Morris and said, I need an agent.
Planko, right?
Johnny Planko, yeah.
See those?
I remember one time in his drawer, he had a bottle of some kind of whiskey and he had a hatchet.
Whoa. Wow.
In his drawer.
Wow. It's old school.
Old school. He never took the hatchet out at me or anything, but he definitely had a hatchet in his drawer.
Wow. I hear stories of the way this master filmmaker who made masterpieces, how he would yell at actors. I'm talking about Kubrick. And you don't really talk about him yelling at you so much, but you were witness.
Well, he never yelled at me.
It's interesting.
I saw him yell at people.
You saw him yell at people. Like take 70 or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yelling.
Over a 2-day period, yeah.
Things like, do it good now. And stuff like that. It just makes me, how do you place this in terms of like, we know this guy was one of the greatest we've ever had, right? Mm-hmm. But can we just talk about how maybe that could have been done differently in terms of how he talked to actors? Do you know what I mean? Well,
I think it could have been done differently, but I think that it was very rare when he did it. And I don't know, like after the first 6 months of being there, I was feeling really good about myself. I hadn't gotten fired yet. I was doing okay. He let me block our own scenes and do our stuff and say, what are you going to, he'd come out in Australia and say, what are you guys going to do? He'd say that to Matthew and I, and we'd show him what we came up with. We had to come up with little vignettes of stuff and all kinds of stuff, Matthew and I. And he would, he would come out and he would just say, can you do it on that side of the bunk instead of that side so I can use the light from the window and blah, blah. He would explain the things. And he goes, and then you move over there instead of going over there. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? And then he would,
That's beautiful.
And a month later we'd shoot it.
A month. But it was born from you. I mean, that's interesting, right?
Yeah,
because that's an interesting way of.
We couldn't change a word. We could rehearse, and if other words came up and he liked them, he had his typewriter on set and he would just type them, and then they became gold. Like you couldn't change them then. A lot of people think that Lee Erbe was allowed to improvise. He did improvise, but not on camera. Not until only in rehearsal, and only after Stanley typed it out.
Right. And
so once it was typed out, he had to stick to that stuff. He made it really hard for himself, actually, because he would improv a lot, and then he'd have to memorize all those lines.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's like Cassavetes. People think Cassavetes just improvised, but no, it's rehearsed.
But I think as far as like I remember one incident. I won't say who the actor was, but it was like 70 something takes, and it was over like I think a day and a half period, and at I think it was the second day when he was on take some 70 something, and I had nothing to do, so Stanley invited me to come sit next to him when they were shooting at the Video Village, and which was hardly a village. I mean, back then the monitors were like this long and like that big, and but he just had 2 monitors, and we would watch them, and he had a megaphone, and the set was like through a hole in a building about 50 feet from us, and he would talk clear his throat in the mic of the thing. You hear like that first.
God.
And they say, you fucked up, it's take 72. Can you do it better? Which was wild. I'd never seen anything like that. It was all brand new to me. But I was going to say that the truth is that it sort of made sense to me. I mean, would I have gone, did you do it? Can you do it better? No, probably not. But, and would anybody else? I don't know. I'd never worked with anybody like this before. You know, it's like amazing.
Right.
I worked with some NYU directors, but that's it. And also the Trauma guys, I worked with them a little bit, but there was no real directors on those things. There was no directors at all that I can remember. This was a different thing. I mean, it did make sense. The actor wasn't doing that well and didn't know his lines sometimes and stuff, and that's bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't know how you show up on a Stanley Kubrick set and don't know your lines.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's tough. You know, I felt like that was like, oh my God, like I'd be fired. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're not the one that gets yelled at, you must be thinking you're doing very good.
Well, it's a weird feeling because you're just doing what you're being paid to do, and you're hoping that it's going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like I only read, you know, my half of the script. I didn't read the other half of the script. I only had my half, and so I knew Matthew and I were hung out a lot, and you know, I was very friendly with him and his wife and Carrie, and we were all young, and I was 24 years old, and I was just trying to make sense of the character and how I was going to get away with it. And I think I was just I don't think I ever thought about anything other than maybe I'm going to get fired. But I never thought of, hey, I'm being treated better than other people, or I'm not being yelled at. I never had those thoughts. You know, you got to imagine the pressure, especially that character. It's a freaking crazy character to play first up on a giant movie. You know, it's crazy. So it's like, and I really had to come fully loaded.
And then you know this end scene that you have to do, and that's always on your mind for like 6 months.
Yeah, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff for it. There's so many gifts that I was given in that time of my life with Stanley. There was so many kind of amazing things that happened that I still don't understand why. I mean, I don't understand why that Matthew walked by on the street and I talked to him. I don't
There's something weird there.
Like, what a gift. And then the night before we were leaving work, the night before the big scene where I kill the sergeant and then kill myself, we were walking to our cars, I believe Matthew and I, and you know, Stanley used to do, like I said before, he used to do this thing where he'd clear his throat, and you knew he was going to say something when he did. And we're walking, we hear like that, and I turn, you know, he's staring at me, and I'm like, hey, he's like, do you know what you're going to do tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. He goes, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. He goes, okay, you know, it has to be big. It has to be Lon Chaney big. And I, you know, had a stack of black and white horror movies on my table in my flat. And a few of them were fucking Lon Chaney. And that's crazy that we were exactly on the same page about how to get away with it. And I had already called my teacher, Sharon Chatton, just because I like to ask her questions. You know, like, am I on the right track here? Do you think? She's like, yeah, you're on the right track. That's a great idea. You know, you got to, you know, just fully commit to it. You know, I'm like, yeah. So that was like, you know, in like one go, like just in a parking lot outside where we were shooting in Beckton Gasworks, I had all the confidence in the world the next day.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I went in, I did a kind of an effective memory of a bit of a torturous time in my life, and sat by myself in the corner in this warehouse we were shooting, and until they were ready, and then they called me on set, and I did it 3 times.
3 takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about it now, and I don't even. I'll tell you a funny thing. I was invited. Do you remember that tour that they did of all his props and cameras and stuff.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
big,
yeah.
traveled the world, that whole
Yeah.
thing. Anyway, it was in LA, and I happened to be in LA at the time. And I was invited, somebody got wind that I was in LA, and the curator of the museum invited me to come see it privately with my wife at the time. And we went down there, and they gave us this walk through. First of all, when Stanley died, I had never, I hadn't spoke to him for maybe a year or so, and then he died. And then I went to this kind of thing they had, Directors Guild thing they had for him, and they showed him on this big screen talking, the last message that he sent to Warner Brothers. And I saw him on the screen, but I didn't get like emotional or anything. I just thought, oh, fuck, yeah, that's him. He's gotten a little older, but that's him. But when I walked in, the first thing you see is his chair encased in glass. And that was the chair that was on the set, a Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a picture of it that Matthew took that's in my house, the chair. Because it's really cool. It says Kubrick on it. And It's got a wooden box for his script on the side of it and stuff. But when I saw that chair, I wasn't even in the museum. It's the first thing you see. And the emotion just fucking boiled up out of me. And my wife was standing there, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "This is fucking his chair, man." Everybody's looking at me like I'm out of my mind. It's like crazy, crazy. But that's not what I wanted to say. So we went into the place, and there's so much to look at. It took hours and hours and hours, but we eventually ended up in this Full Metal Jacket section. And on the wall was a monitor, and on the monitor was playing a tape on a loop of Stanley, Matthew, and I in Stanley's trailer, improvising a scene. And I'm looking at it, and I can't connect me with that. I don't remember it happening.
Yeah.
I remember that we did stuff like that, but I didn't remember the scene, and I couldn't feel like I was that guy.
Isn't that weird?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But we did do, he did let us experiment, and he did trust us enough. I mean, there was nobody else but Matthew and I going in his trailer. You know what I mean? It was like, that's not true, but I mean Lee. Lee would go in there and discuss things with him a lot. But it was pretty shocking to see this thing. It's very odd.
Yeah. I want to talk about this thing that you said that I think is important. You are not fond of what you did in Ed Wood.
Yeah.
And it was important to you to go back to Wells and do it the way you wanted to do it, and you made this 5-minute.
Not the way I wanted Tim to do it, but the way that I wanted to perform him.
Yes.
I felt like I didn't get the chance to do that. It was too quick, and I think that I knew going in that I wasn't going to be able to do it, and there just wasn't enough time. And
somebody else would just let it go, move on to something else. What is it about you needing to do it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Something about that.
There's a couple of things that made me do that film. One is I was doing Law and Order at the time, and I was completely exhausted. Me and my friend thought of this story. I figured out that if we took the monologue, the Ferris wheel monologue in Third Man, and we looked at the structure of that monologue, and the plan was, and what we executed was, to eventually say that monologue in the movie for whatever reason at the time. We hadn't written it yet. But that the structure, the way the short was built, and the act and what's happening in the short is exactly the structure of the monologue. Not the exact story, but the same thing is happening. The same kind of thing is happening.
Yeah.
And so there was that aspect. But I just think, other than that, I just think it's just something that I needed to do for myself. I just needed to, because I saw it and I liked it. I liked it with, what's his name? His voice. He did it so well. It was so good. And I really do look like Wells, and it's pretty fucking good. You know, Rick Baker helped me a little bit with some stuff to build my underbite out a little bit. And I think he did some stuff with my hairline at the time and stuff, but mostly it was just me. And the stuff that he did to build my an underbite out a little bit, just a tiny subtle thing, was a thing that he used to call a plumper. It wasn't on the outside, it was on the inside. So it was like this piece that he would mold that would fit over your teeth, and it would bring your jaw out a little bit. It was really cool. And I loved the movie Ed Wood, but I didn't feel like it was voiceless to me. And it will always be voiceless. So I needed to do that character with a voice once. And so that's all. I think it was part of I think it had to do with ego. I think it had to do with the passion of playing that character, playing Orson Welles, because it was so interesting to me to play him. And especially since I had learned so much about him. That's how I figured out that monologue and stuff, through the research for Ed Wood.
You started like turning down a lot of things around that time, right? Like you even turned down The Sopranos, you said. Something on The Sopranos.
Yeah, something on The Sopranos.
I mean, what would make you turn down something like that? That seems like it was something that was a quality show. You just didn't like the role?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not it. That's not it. No. I liked the role. I would have had to sell my place to do it.
What do you mean?
To afford to be able to live in New York and do that show, we would have had to sell the home that we just bought.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And these are things, these are decisions like that, you know, at a certain point when you're able to eat, right? You don't have to choose this role. You don't want to leave your house, right? That's the reality of it. And it's not like
well, I wanted to do the part. I really, really wanted to do it. I talked to him too, David. I mean, we talked on the phone. I remember like it was yesterday. We talked in the kitchen. I was in my kitchen and we were on the phone, and I literally said to him, David, I love this fucking thing. Are you kidding me? The fact that you would even ask me, but I can't afford to do it. I can't do it and pay fucking rent. I won't be able to do it. He didn't have he didn't want to compromise. He obviously had, I think, another actor in mind too, and he just went with that other actor. I mean, that's what I guess David is like. It's fine. I think it's, he created one of the best shows ever on television. Yeah. So,
see, you told
pretty
this
amazing dude.
When I heard this, you told this amongst talking about turning down other things, and it made me think like that you were very picky, and even picky about this.
I don't think I'm picky enough.
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
But when you think about things that you've done, I mean, you're good in even movies that aren't that good.
That's what I mean by not being picky.
I mean, I was obsessed. You'll never guess what movie of yours that I was obsessed with when I was a kid. I mean, and this, I hope you think that this is actually a good movie, but no one talks about this movie. Household Saints.
Yeah.
I mean, that
they just put out a new DVD.
Yeah.
She's one of the best directors I've ever worked with.
Is that right?
Nancy Savoca.
And tell me why.
Her husband, Rich. I mean, the two of them, him producing and her directing, was, I don't know, you felt like they kept, first, Rich was always pulling, he's such a, the two of them are just amazing people. Anyway. But Rich, they were both young. I guess we were all around the same age, actually. But in our 30s, and Rich was always pulling his hair out of his head. He was, he's suffering from all this money stuff all the time. But always, I would see him down the hall, like always way away from us, pulling his, like fucking depressed, like, these two independent filmmakers making films that nobody why would we, Household Saints, what's that? Lily Taylor, only the best actress in America at the time, but nobody knew, but they're so dynamic. Nancy was like the epitome of it. She is the epitome of a director. Like, she just knows what she wants. She knows what movies she's making. She knows what she needs you to be. She wants you to be that in your version and just light her up. You know, she wants you every take to make her think that this was the best choice she ever made in her life. You know? And she was just such a great cheerleader for us all too. Like, she was really backed us up on everything. And I mean, I loved doing that. I mean, I could work for Nancy again, and I'd work for her, and so she wouldn't even have to show me the script. She asked me to do something, I'd go. I wouldn't even care. Honestly, I would just go and do it.
Right. And how many, just name how many. I don't need names.
What?
How many filmmakers do you think that about?
Very few. So, yeah, there's...
I mean, that says something.
Well,
doesn't it?
I mean, there's people that are just, I think, amazing because they're amazing shooters. I think people are amazing because they're amazing working with actors. You know, they're all so different. But I would put her right up there with Stanley and, you know, one of the best shooters. The two best shooters I've ever worked with so far is Barry Sonnenfeld and Fuqua, Antoine Fuqua. Those guys are. They're filmmakers. Like, they know how to shoot a movie, and they know. And Barry obviously is an incredible shot designer because that's where he started, and he's just amazing. But yeah, no, there's a few. There's a handful, I would say.
Yeah.
I think that today, that there's incredible talent out there today. I just love what I'm seeing. It just makes me so happy. The boys and the girls out there right now are just amazing.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it? I mean, a lot of them have been on my show, and that's the first time I hear about them, because I'm out of the loop sometimes.
Yeah,
and
me
I'm
too.
like, what? And then I'm blown away, and then I start spreading the word about these people, and then there's another one. I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
And they're all like in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, they're way, way, way beyond what we were. Yeah.
It's amazing, right?
I know. I find it to be so thrilling. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think, like we did, my generation, we stood on the shoulders of the people before us, and I think there's some of that going on. I think they're standing on our shoulders. My generation of actors also took a lot of chances. And we still had incredible leading men and incredible character actors in my generation. And we were coming off a big generation to stand off of, you know, it's like, I mean, crazy.
Yes.
But, you know, I think they're doing kind of the same thing, and at the same time, they're doing work that's phenomenal. You know, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
I can't tell you how much that is on my mind. It's so important. You know, I know it may sound boring to people, but if you've lived the life of an actor or any kind of performer or any kind of artist, really, I mean, unless you've gotten bogged down in your failures, and you just have a bad attitude about life, unless you're doing that, I think that it's an incredible thing to recognize the people that are coming up, and to see what, you know, how you may have, and your friends that you know and are close to may have contributed to what they're allowed to do these days, or they're able to do, or they're inspired to do, just because of who they are.
Yes.
And how they're sucking up inspiration like we did. You know, it's an amazing thing. You know, it truly is. You
said that when you came off of Criminal Intent, you were a 10 times better actor.
Oh, for sure.
What was it about that did that to you?
Well, number one, I learned to stand up for myself in a way that I had never had to do before, because I'd been very lucky with starting with Stanley Kubrick. But people, for some reason, thought that me going into television meant I didn't know anything about acting. I guess, you know, the people, the powers that be on that job. And so luckily my main boss was Dick Wolf, and he believed in me 100%. So Dick gave me complete full reign. But the people that we were I was working with on the ground, you know, they took the attitude where I don't know how to do television. I may be a film actor, but I don't know how to do television. I just thought that was silly. I mean, it's not radio, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I thought that was really funny. But I found it to be kind of like discouraging in a way. But then I realized, I just have to stand up for myself. I just have to be, I just have to scoot as close to the table as I can and be on it. And that's what I did. And
was it hard for you to do that though, to stand up for yourself?
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, look, first of all, I've worked for some of the best directors ever. I've been so lucky, like a lot of us have. You know, when you get to work with these guys, you never forget what you learned with them, these guys and girls that I've worked with some incredible men and women. And actors too, and producers too, by the way. Incredibly talented producers are like, you are happy you knew them or know them. But I'd never had to stand up for myself before. And so I had to do it. I had to learn how to stand up for myself the correct way. And at first I was it was not great. But then I learned to I've taught myself how to block scenes, how to help tell story. And I got into this whole thing where I was so close to the table that you couldn't pry me from it. But my acting was getting better and better. I could feel it. I felt it as an artist, and I felt it from my peers, and I felt it from the scenes that I would do with other actors that would come in that I always wanted to work with and stuff like that. And I would learn from them sometimes. And just the idea of being able to make transitions within a scene. It's different than a movie, like back in the day, not now, because now television is like movies, almost like long movies. Like 6 episodes is like a long movie. But back then, television was different, especially Law and Order. It was episodic and very kind of Dragnet-esque.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn. I learned on that show how to make several transitions within a scene, where the movie you might make it over an act.
Right.
But in the television, like back then, you had to make these incredible transitions within one 5-page, 6-page scene.
Yeah.
And in our case, sometimes 10-page scenes, but still, it's like hard to do to make 2 or 3 transitions within a scene and actually do it where the audience is still hooked.
Yeah.
So that, I learned that doing that. I just learned it
takes a skill.
Yeah. And also the amount of dialogue.
Yeah.
The amount of dialogue and the commitment to learning and being able to juggle several scripts at a time. Like we were doing, like Kate and I would have to do, we'd be performing one, learning dialogue for scenes that we're not shooting that day. So learning why we're shooting other scenes, right?
Jesus.
And then there would be another script that I was learning the whole story of that he had published a week ago.
Right.
That I was trying to figure out like how this works and give notes to him before. And then there was a brand new script that was published that we had to read and then go a read through of with notes.
Whoa.
So it was this constant thing for 10 months a year.
Yeah.
And believe me, you come out of that and it's like everything else is a fucking vacation.
Yes.
I was on this set last night and, I'm 65 years old and everybody's tired and stuff. And I'm like, Jesus, like this is nothing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I had a friend who had a nice role on an episode of Criminal Intent.
Oh, really?
And so I just I texted him. I said, finally having Vincent on, what do you got to say? And he said, a big thing I remember is that I was very nervous and he just put his arm around me and said, just say lines. and he said that just putting your arms around him calmed him down.
Yeah.
And he did it. And he I think he's very good in this show. And he's a great actor. But I would never have known he was nervous. But I'm sure you faced these kind of one-time day players or, people that come on for one episode all the time this is their big break.
Yeah, we liked it a lot. We liked it a lot because everybody was in the same boat all the time and you could see it on them. They would wear it when they were the type you're talking about, where they're brand new.
Yeah.
And this is their first shot. And you have to, as a fellow actor, you have to talk to them. You have to. They're shitting themselves. You have to. And it helps the day.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, because you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to add an extra couple of hours because somebody's so nervous they can't remember their lines, which they've studied.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing that I would always do, whoever it was, is I would go to set early and I would just sit there and talk to them. And just it was all about making it as easy as possible. Making sure that they understood, putting my hands on them to know that I'm not afraid and they can touch me and I can touch them.
That matters.
Just everything makes them feel more invited.
Yes.
And then I used to just say, just say the words. Like, you got this. Now all you have to do is say the words.
Yeah.
Like, you're already there. There's no acting required now.
Yes. That's actually freeing, right? It just, you know the words, just say them. Yeah. That's it, but
just say the words. Just follow me, react to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll react to you. And, the thing is that you have to make them feel like they're important and in that they're included. Kate used to do the same thing. She used to talk to them all the time too. And Kathryn Erbe. And I remember one time, the two of us, we would, on our 17th, 18th hour sometimes in the night, we would get into giggle fits where the two of us, it could be some horrible, grotesque scene that we're doing and we can't stop fucking laughing.
Yeah.
And there would be an actor there that had never been on a set before. Yeah. And they would say, are we going to shoot the scene tonight? And we would say, yeah. And we would feel bad. Because we're laughing. We're taking too long. And they would go, yeah, because I'm like, I don't know if what's happening here. Like, they would be very confused. And I would say, oh, yeah, you're so right. And so they would sometimes tell us to get our shit together. And that would make them completely comfortable because we would say, yeah, of course, dude, sorry, man. And then they felt like, they didn't know as much as we did. So.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of work and a lot of actors.
I worked with Kathryn Erbe in the church one time here. So I had her email and I emailed her and I just said, Vincent's coming on my show. I said, just give me something. And she wrote back, when is he going to be on? And I said when. This was weeks ago. And she said, okay, I will get back to you AS. And she hasn't. So I didn't want to write again because I'm like, I don't know what the situation, you know what I mean?
No, we're great, yeah.
I figured.
Yeah.
Instead of her saying something about you, you said that she taught you a lot on this show.
She taught me so much. So much. She's such a fine actress. It's amazing. I used to watch her handle dialogue sometimes and I would be like, oh my God, how is she fucking doing this? Like, she was one of the ones that, besides a million other things she can do great, just as a person and a mom and an actress and she, and the kind of scenes that she can handle. The first time I ever saw her acting was on Oz. She played that part of a serial killer. She was so, God damn it. I'm like, you're getting her? Like, that's incredible. Anyway, but so she could do, Kate can do anything and everything. But she's one of the people on any of those shows that could handle exposition like nobody else. Mm-hmm. Katie could say like a page long of exposition and you were so interested in it. She would do it so well. And
the most boring writing on paper.
But
she makes it seem like it's just like
also her set etiquette. I was sort of like wild and she was, she had incredible etiquette. And I think that we were good together because of that. I think that I used to annoy the shit out of her sometimes, but I think we never had an argument the whole fucking 9 years.
That's amazing right there.
Yeah. That's
amazing.
But, I knew when I would piss her off. I knew when, I remember one time, it was three of us. I forget who the third person was, but it was Kate and I were standing outside a courtroom. We have this scene. And I was doing this thing where I wanted to keep moving in the scene. Because of the next scene we were going to do, I wanted to be a little jumpy in that scene. So I wanted to start being jumpy in this scene, but it didn't have to do with anything we were talking about. And she was like, can you just settle down, please? Can you just stop moving, please? Like so much. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Sorry.
Thinking ahead.
Well, I actually think I was just being annoying. I actually think I was just being annoying. And I think she set me straight.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
You said something that I think is really important. Failure is everything.
It is.
You gotta go all the way every time and accept that failure is an option always.
Yes.
I think that the way you said this is so important. And it almost feels like failure is a tool for you.
For sure. And I think I've heard it a lot lately in young actors, and I really like that. I heard Timothée Chalamet talking about it the other day on an interview he did, where he believes in it. It's so smart for a young actor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we were taught that. I was taught that at his age from the best teachers in New York at the time. And there's nothing better than accepting failure in the arts, because it is what makes it art. Mm-hmm. You have to fail before greatness, you know, and greatness is measured, failure isn't. Mm-hmm. So you might as well fail and get there the right way, so that when it is measured, it is great.
That's beautiful.
And so it's like, you know, that, and also it's just, it frees you up. And I think that's the best thing that young actors can hang on to is, why not try something?
Yes.
Who the fuck knows if it's going to work or not?
Yes.
And you're going to be told whether it works or not.
Yes.
Because you never know. Just because nobody's seen it before doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So you're offering all kinds of options. You're offering an option that could be just complete failure, or you could be offering an option that's so unique that nobody's fucking seen it before, and like, why the fuck would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Oh my God, that might be great.
Yeah.
And they'll go with it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be that brave. The only way you can be that brave is to accept failure. I say it to my students when I teach all the time. I teach sometimes for the Strasberg Institute. And whenever I have off, and they let me give a scholarship away every year, so they don't pay me to teach, but I get to give a free scholarship away. Anyway, so till this day, last night I did it. The only way I can go on a set is if my head is out on the chopping block and I'm begging for the blade to come down, begging it, calling it, screaming it to come down and chop my head off. Like, I know I'm in the right place if I think that blade is going to come down. You know, and when it does, it doesn't work. And when it doesn't come down, it fucking works.
It works better than if you were not on the chopping block, right?
Totally. And
that's what you're saying.
And you've learned a great lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fall on your ass and get up having learned something.
Yes.
Period. You know?
Isn't it incumbent on the director to create the environment where failure is a necessity like this?
It would help.
Right? And when that doesn't happen, when there's a time crunch, or there's just like, you got to get this right, or you know, or just that feeling, maybe nobody's saying those words, but there's just this feeling of, like, that's where I feel like that's where we're getting a lot of shit, maybe. You know, because there's not this fostering of that. And I think it's incumbent on directors, or if they're teaching directing, to be like, this is what an actor needs to be able to be safe to do. They need to be able to go on the chopping block, like you're saying, and it be available for that. I think that's not happening a lot.
I don't know. A lot of that kind of stuff is hard for me to gauge these days, because I work this one way, and you know, it works for me. So I don't know, like, nobody ever stops me from trying things. Yeah, nobody ever stops me. And I don't like to do a lot of takes. Yeah. I will do a lot of takes if they want to, but I don't like to do it. It's not my favorite. I'd like to do like after the third take, I tell them that's the extent of my talent.
That's great.
But some actors like to do, some directors like to do 20 takes, 30 takes, 40 takes, whatever. I mean, I'll do them obviously, but and I do get it. Like I understand that way of doing things. It does for a certain kind of film. I think it really works well where you get your actors to the point where it's just sort of like documentary. Mm-hmm. It's become nothing else. It's like working an 18-hour night. Kate and I used to work 18-hour days, right? And on the last scenes, we would be looking at each other like, do we suck or what? And one of us would remind the other one, dude, we're probably right now doing the best work we've done all year because we're so exhausted we don't give a shit.
Yeah. That should be like that all the time.
All the time, yeah.
You're returning to a role that's about to come out, Charlie
Cox, yeah.
Yeah, in the Daredevil series here. I mean, this must be something that I don't know what the deal was. I mean, you're coming back. It must be something that you want to return to and that you're getting something out of.
Yeah. I mean, I want to do all kinds of things. I love this character though. Like this character is what makes me keep coming back. Mm-hmm. And the people that I work for, those guys that run Marvel are really nice to work for. Mm-hmm. They run this giant organization that's been successful, and they are so good to actors. I mean, my God, like the freedom that I get from these guys, and this is like Kevin Feige, like the head of Marvel, and then the guys that and girls that work under him, and it's like these people are extremely talented people, and they're so good to us actors. I mean, honestly, like I find it amazing. Charlie and I are treated so well on set and in our jobs, and they trust us so much. That it's there's so many things to do with this character. This character's the definition of a broken man. Mm-hmm. Like he's a broken man in an environment where there's a fucking superhero, and our characters, Charlie and my characters, don't have any superpowers. We're not from space or anything. Like it's not, you know what I mean? We're just two like broken dudes. So,
yeah.
I really like to play him because you can put this maniac, he's a psychopath, in any situation. You can put him in a domestic situation, with a wife, and you can put him with a kid. You can do anything you want. Yeah. He's so out of, like a fish out of water in any kind of thing, other than when he's got his hands around somebody's throat, Yeah. And he's just this incredible character to play because of it.
Yeah. And
his size and the way I come across on with his posture and his voice. His voice is based on purely on an emotion that I wanted to find his voice. And so I did a couple of emotional recalls and remembered this one event. I won't tell you what it was, but it was one event that happened in my life with one of my sons. And I just was sitting in my office for a few hours just trying to figure out this voice. And I did this emotional recall, and I got very emotional. And then I started just saying one of the lines from the script that I had, and just talked through the emotion rather than acted it. Just spoke the words, the author's words, flat, in a flat way through the emotion. And I heard Fisk the first time. I heard him. And so every time you see that guy talking, it's coming from that. No matter if he's happy, sad, in love, killing it's always coming from that event in my life. And so he's a very emotional character because of that. And he comes across emotional because of it.
And do you have to get back there every time to get that voice? Do you know what I mean? Emotionally?
Yeah.
That's got to be tiring.
Yeah, well, it's part of the job.
I should have known that by now. They do pay us to do this. I should have known that by now. Vincent D'Onofrio, I'm not asking this. I'm insisting this. Okay. You must come back on the show.
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. Whenever you want.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.